Welcome back as we near the end of POE for this year. Today we're going to be discussing projectile motion. Projectile motion. An object that is shot with only initial horizontal velocity is in projectile motion. So what I'm trying to show you here is if there is no gravity, this cannonball is going to be shot straight across. It's only got initial horizontal velocity. It doesn't have any y velocity whatsoever at all. The only reason it forms this inverse or upside down half parabola is because gravity is pulling down on it. And this would be the distance that it would have fallen in that time frame. Well, the time that it falls is also the time that it takes to go forward. So if it's been 1 second to get to fall this far, then it's also taken 1 second to go this far horizontally. If it's taken 1 second to fall this far vertically, then it's taken 1 second to get this far horizontally. What we find out is the time is the same in both situations. All right, these are the two equations you're going to be using with projectile motion. All right, these are yf equals yi plus vit plus 1/2 gt squared because it's gravity that's pulling on it. And then the exact same equation using x's and a's. These are again, ask yourself. So here's the beginning steps to this. Ask yourself, what does the problem ask me to find? Are they trying to get me to find the time, the velocity, or the distance? Typically, you're going to be asked to find one of those three things. You're either going to be asked to find time, distance, or velocity. So ask yourself, which of these three things are you being asked to find? And then ask yourself, which equation contains that variable? Are they asking me to find the time? Are they asking me to find the horizontal distance or the vertical distance? If they're asking me to find the horizontal distance, then that's xf. If they're asking me to find the vertical distance, that's yf. Are they asking us to find the velocity in the x direction? This almost always is going to be the velocity that came off the cliff, or the velocity that came off the building, or the velocity it came off horizontally with. Ask yourself again, which equation contains that variable? Use the other equation to find the time. Because, for example, in this, here's one of the things I want to point out to you, is if we use this here, when this cannonball is shot off of here, shot out, once it leaves the muzzle, once it leaves the cannon, there is nothing accelerating it anymore. If there is no acceleration, that means this right here can go to 0. Or you can just get rid of that part of the equation. Oh, that was VIT. Also, if we make this right here be the x and y origin, xi, where it's starting from, is 0, which also allows us to get rid of that equation. So quite often when it comes to the x equation, you're going to be left with xf equals vit, or distance equals rate times time. xf is the distance or the displacement that it goes, velocity is the rate, t is the time. In our y equation, okay, again, yf, all right, yf down here, yf is going to become 0. Here's the other thing you need to know. yi is typically going to be the height. The initial velocity in the y direction, well, we said that its initial velocity is only horizontal. So it has no initial y velocity. So you can get rid of that part of the equation almost all the time. You're left with height plus 1/2 gt squared. So let's take a look at some problems here. I'm going to start by making a little list of what they give me. Bullet shot straight off of an 80-meter cliff. So I know that yi is 80 meters. I know that yf is going to be 0 with an initial velocity of 100 meters per second. Well, I know that my initial velocity, I'm going to put a little subscript x there because that's going to go in my x equation. How far has it gone when it hits the ground? Well, again, ask yourself, all right, they want to know how far has it gone when it hits the ground. That right there, if I draw a little graph here, and here's my cliff, they want to know here to here. So is that an xf or is that y, or is that the height? That's xf. They want us to find out that right here. So I've told you, use the other equation, because if you try to find xf, that's one variable. You don't know the time. That's two variables in one equation. You can't do that. So let's plug in what I know into my yf equation because I want to know xf. So I'm going to use the other equation. So now we start plugging stuff in here. Yf is 0 every time. It's going to come off, hit the ground every time. Yi, that's an 80-meter cliff. The initial velocity we said is 0 in these projectile motion problems, so that's going to, you can cross that out every single time. Plus 1/2 negative 9.8 t squared. Notice I've only got one variable left in here. So we're going to get 80 equals negative 4.9. Actually, it's not negative. I've already canceled that out because the 80 when it went to the other side was negative. I know that the time it took then to fall this far is 4.04 seconds. Again, the time it took to fall is the same amount of time it took to go the same distance. So I can go back into my equation, and again, I can say that xi is 0, so I don't need to worry about that. There is no acceleration in the x direction, so that goes away. Every single time, people, those two parts of the equation are going to go away. All I'm left with then is xf equals its initial velocity, which was 100 meters per second, times the time, which was 4.04. So it went a distance of 404 meters. Okay, here's our problem. Stunt motorcyclist rides off a building traveling 45 meters per second. He lands 25 meters away from the base of the building. How tall is the building? How tall is the building? That right there is yi. That's what they want me to find. So if I got to find the height of the building, I have to start, as we've said, with the other equation. xf equals xi plus vit plus 1/2 at squared. Well, as I've told you several times, there is no acceleration, so we can get rid of that part of the equation. Xi, we're going to say, is at the base is 0, so we can get rid of that part of the equation. Xf then is 25. The initial velocity is 45. Solve for time. Time turns out to be equal to 0.56 seconds. Well, now that I know the time that it took to go forward, that's also the time that it took to fall. So I can now go back into my yf equation. And as I've told you, a couple of these things are always going to cancel out. There never is going to be initial velocity in the y direction for right now. Later on, as you guys get into physics, we might include that. But for right now, there's not going to be. So as we ask here, let's plug in what we know. Yf is 0. Yi plus 1/2 negative 9.8.56 squared. I've taken this and punched it in my calculator and got negative 1.54 meters. If I take the y to the other side, I get negative y equals negative 1.54 meters. Negatives cancel out, and the height that this motorcyclist jumped from was 1.54 meters. Hey, I'll catch you guys on the flip side.